Hi guys. So you pronounce it Dougiamas, like 3 syllables. Well, no one in my family knows how to say it either. It's one of those names. So that's the pronunciation that I got from a newsreader once, and I said, yeah, that's a good way to say it. So that's how I'm going with it. I'm pleased some of you made it here on a Sunday morning for the Sunday sermon. I should be delivering a description of humanity and all of its problems, and talking about Moodle. We have some lag, but that's because I'm on the other side of the planet right now, where I live in Perth, in Western Australia. I am planning to move to Europe over the next year or two, just to be where the action is. Obviously, I can see the action going on right here. So let me share my screen and show you some stuff. Okay, we seeing that okay? So I'll start with some background. Let me talk about Moodle. So I started Moodle many years ago, and I'm not sure this is going to play. Let's see. Actually, what happens if I do this? Tell me if you could still see this animation. It might be choppy, but can you see it? Okay. So this is me starting Moodle back in around the year 2001. And I'm guessing quite a few of you are developers or have some developing background. So this is from our Git repository. Of course, there was no Git back then. We used to use CVS. And in the beginning, I was alone and developing on my own a little project. I thought that it would be my hobby in the evenings and that I would become an academic. And while I'm doing this, I'm also doing a PhD at a university, which is about the same topic. If you're ever doing this, I advise to make sure that your PhD is about the process of building the software, not the software, just to make sure the university doesn't own your software afterwards. So this animation continues for the next 15 or so years, 16 years until now. And what is Moodle now? So Moodle is a learning management system. It can look like this. This is the one of the latest versions. So you have courses that are run by different universities or schools or workplaces. This is a Brazilian university. This is the Cleveland College of Art and Design. This is Cambridge Education Development. St. Martin's University. This is one in Colombia. This is a very vanilla looking site, Vedic Mathematics. There's a German one here. This is a bit more corporate. This is actually my old school. I grew up in the desert of Australia, and my school was on the radio, shortwave radio. And this has now become this school. And they use Moodle now. This is Munster. This is in England, the National Health Service. So they use it to train their leaders within the very large public organisation there. This is UNICEF. They have an Agora site, which is a learning site around various topics. This is an airline. Here's a few more logos of some universities around the world and some companies as well. Surprisingly, it seems the larger the company, the more likely they are to use Moodle. I don't know why. They could obviously pay for anything, but they do seem to like open source, which is good. And of course, our main community site is running Moodle itself. I think we're outgrowing that. I'm going to talk about this, but from the beginning until now, we've been using Moodle itself for our community site, which has had a lot of benefits in terms of learning about the software, talking to each other in the software, while we're using it. So Moodle is a learning platform. It's in this space. It is obviously open source. It's got managers, users, and groups and roles that are in departments and in courses, and there's competencies, and it's the administration of all that, and there's APIs to all of that. So the basic structure is there's a core learning platform. There are plugins sitting all over it. The way Moodle's designed, we have different types of plugins for different purposes. Unlike, say, Drupal, and I haven't even looked at Nextcloud, so I'm looking for. I mean, I have looked at it, but I haven't looked at the code much, and I'm looking forward to understanding more about that. But we have a simple plugin system to integrate with other systems, and then you take those plugins and you put them together into activities, and that's how you build a course. So this basic structure is something that's actually not very technology dependent. It's very generic. And as long as you have the idea that a course is a sequence of activities, then Moodle can remain relevant. And so we have a long future ahead of us. Now you access Moodle via devices, and that's where the interesting thing in the future comes from. Obviously we have a web interface as the default one. We have a mobile app, and a lot of other people developing mobile apps too, and that communicates with the core via web services. And we have VR work going on and speech interfaces going on, which are still using similar web services and just alternate ways to do the same things that you would do on the web. So since that beginning, Moodle has really grown, and we have optional registration and opt-in registration, and so of those we've got about 81,000 registered sites. However, whenever I ask people, have you registered, they always say no. And when I get people to hold up their hands at conferences, it seems to be about 1 in 10 actually register. So there's a lot of places in the world where I'll be told all of the universities use Moodle, or no, 90% plus of the schools or universities use Moodle. So it has become very widespread, and it's a de facto sort of platform for learning. In Europe, this was late last year, about a year ago. There was about 65% of higher education, so universities and colleges using Moodle in Europe, and a number of other systems, of course, around. Some of them open source, which is cool. So Europe's pretty high. Latin America is much higher. We have more in Latin America and in Oceania as well. So around Australia, around here, in Asia, a lot of Moodle. The information on this is, again, not very good, because a lot of people will take the open source and modify it and not tell anybody what it is, and we don't really have very good information. But we do know that Moodle, there is the first column, is mainstream. It's very mainstream now. It's very interesting becoming a mainstream product. And there's been a lot of contributors. This is a word cloud of all the major programmers who've taken part. There are hundreds over the years, and some of them more than others, of course. And we're in pretty much every country of the world. In fact, our country list is more than the number of countries in the world, because if you include all the little, municipalities and things, it adds up. But there's no place in the world where there's not a Moodle site somewhere. So we've grown to the size now where we have quite a lot of Moodle community events, and this shows some of the Moodle conferences that are happening this year. These are the major ones. The community runs a lot of them. Lately, we've taken more control, and we've started the idea of official Moodle Mooks. And so we now we have a contract that a local organizer must sign and follow to become an official Moodle Moot. And that means they have to do certain things regarding the branding. They have to, some of the format is a little bit dictated, and there's restrictions on commerciality around it. So only people who have commercial input to the Moodle projects are allowed to be sponsors, or at least they can't be competitors, right? And we have had the instance where competitors have run Moodle conferences, and once they have everybody in, then they sell them something else. So really interesting problems. So that's why we're starting to get a bit more official. It's good though for quality, and we're working on the quality and making sure that these events are not only educational and useful for people who come, but are fun. Like, you know, we have certain style of parties and things that we're working on to so they can be quite large. This is the last one in France. There was about 550 people there. The party was in some sort of I think it was an old church, but it was turned into some public venue. It was a pretty cool place anyway. Apparently Napoleon. So this was in Lyon. And in the Middle East, we can't call them Moodle Mooks. We call them Moodle Majlis because the word moot means death in Arabic. So we came up with this name. I prefer this name actually. In Arabic, Majlis is, you know, a bunch of guys sitting around on pillows, drinking little coffees and maybe smoking a pipe, passing it around and having a discussion. You know, so that's that the conference is there. And I should talk about the business model. So the business model of Moodle up till now has been to have Moodle partners. So we have a certified services provider scheme, and companies apply to, it's a long application form and then a long process of determining whether we think they're good enough. And that is getting stricter and stricter as the years go by. We ask for a lot of financial reporting. They have to, every Moodle client they get, they have to report to us, and we charge them 10% of their gross revenue, which is what pays for the core team, the company that I run. And they do services like training, consulting, custom development, hosting, courseware, analytics, support, of course. So that's been the model up till now, and it's changing with more revenue sources, but that's how we've done it. So that's a good start. So this open source project, which I just started as my own little thing, has become this ecosystem of companies, of developers, of users who are working together, doing a lot of things without us even knowing about it, which is great. That's the nature of open source. But more and more, it becomes clear that we need to take this start and do something big with it. Because we have a real possibility here of doing something really useful for the world. So let me take a step back and let's look at this world, right? So this is where we are all. We're all sitting on this ball in space. It's not very big. Okay, I'm talking to you now from the other side, and I travel around it frequently. Every month or two, I'm basically doing a lap around this thing. Now, and if you look at some of the statistics of things that have happened over the past 200 years, as a species, we've actually done some pretty good things. So, you know, poverty has dropped, basic education has improved, literacy has improved, democracy, whether you think it's good or bad, has spread, and well, not whether it's good or bad, but whether it's well or not well implemented. But about half the countries in the world now are democracies. We've got 86% vaccinated. Child mortality has dropped down to about 4%. So these are, you know, these are good things, but these are basic things. These are very, very basic things about living on the planet, right? There's still a lot of problems. And if you look at the UN site, they have a list of 17 sustainable development goals. These are things that they think we should all work on to at least just survive, right? Just survive as a species. We're not even talking about anything particularly fantastic. These are just surviving. So I like to focus on these ones a bit more. these are in that list, but maybe this is a subset. So, you know, inequality is increasing. It's getting worse. Food and water security in some places is getting worse. The refugee crisis is getting worse. We've got 65 million people moving around, no home. We've got climate change. It's an incredibly huge thing facing us all. We've got ineffective democracy as a problem, and in some ways it seems to be getting worse and worse too. Pollution. You go and look at all these plastic bags we're using and see where they end up in the ocean, and go and look at the size of that pile of plastic in the ocean and what it's killing. It's incredible. The data privacy and ownership, huge battles being fought over ownership, and I don't need to tell you about that. This is basically your raison d'etre. The idea of automation versus jobs we haven't solved. We don't really know what's going to happen once we replace so many jobs. What happens to those people, and how do people live? We've got healthcare quality, we've got education quality. Now, these are massive, big problems, right? So the best thing that I can see to fix those problems is that it's no one person or no one government is going to fix those problems. They're too big. The only way we can fix those problems is we have globally oriented, multiculturally aware, environmentalist, caring citizens, right? Like you and me. People who can think, people who can act locally in small ways, but it adds up and it becomes an effect. And it you know, seems fairly obvious that we need everybody to work on these problems. And so for me, this is all about education. I mean, I can't see any other way. How can you have so many people that are needed to solve these problems without having education? If these people don't know, it's very easy to avoid, to not think about pollution in other parts of the world, or think about refugee problems, etc. If you're happy, you know, drinking your beer at home every night and watching streaming video, then, you know, you may never, depending on what you're choosing to watch on that streaming video, you may never know about these things or care until it's too late. So education is important. Now, technology in this with education. Is Silicon Valley going to solve everything? I'm very strongly minded. It can't. Like, it's deeply trapped in this profit model. Now, I'm not against people making money to survive, but these guys are focused on profits. Profits is the extra money. So after they're paid for everything, they have profits, and this goes to a few wealthy individuals. And if you look at the venture capital funding of these companies, and you look where it comes from, it goes up and up to big money. We're talking people who have a lot of money and a lot of control, and they're actually controlling companies through these means. And the model, if you look at the US, 5% of the population, you know, this is where capitalism is the strongest, you know, most people would say. 5% of the population have 25% of the world's wealth, and they use 30% of the world's resources. That kind of model cannot work everywhere. It simply, mathematically, cannot work in the whole world. Someone has to lose. So if you look at what they're doing, they're so focused on profits that they build these systems that, you know, they started off with good intentions. Let's give you more of what you like, right? You know, you like these, we'll show you more. But it's become an obsession. They're obsessed with giving, auto-playing more and more of these things to you to capture your attention and then sell it. They sell your attention and your data to advertisers. And it's all part of this same capitalistic model of, you know, consumerism, consume, 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 consume. There's no incentive in any of that model to look after anybody's actual whole life or the whole world, right? It's not connected. None of that is connected to these big problems. It's all about the next 5 minutes, the next dollar, and, you know, you look at their language, And they're talking about always disruption, replacement, control. That's the language of the Silicon Valley technology. Our government's going to solve it all if Silicon Valley won't. Well, they try, and there's some regulation that goes on. But you look what's happening in the US. What are they doing? The Trump and the friends who got in, what are they doing? They're destroying regulation. And governments tend to be, even in my country, in many countries, they're focused on short-term election cycles generally. So they're mostly focused on getting elected in 3 years or 4 years. They're not focused on generational improvements. In Europe, I would say, is where some of the best of this stuff is going on. But in most of the world, it's really bad. And it turns out to be, it doesn't really matter who you vote for. But the politicians will get in, and the politicians are controlled by profit-focused big money. And there's a dangerous trend in some parts of the world where education is being privatized and focused on skills training and basically creating workers. It's not about creating citizens, it's about creating people who will work for these companies and make money for someone else. So the inequality thing is a real problem. Worldwide, private wealth is growing faster than the economy. Just think about that for a second. The last year, 143 people in the world had the same wealth as the bottom 50%. At the beginning of this year, that number dropped to 8 people. 8 people had the same wealth as the bottom 50%. And last month, that was down to 5. Now 5 people have the same money as the bottom 50%. And that's just the very, very rich. In general, private wealth is growing faster than the economy, which means eventually, if we keep going like this, a very few people will own everything, right? They're going to run everything, and we're all going to work for them. So, do we disrupt, replace, control, or what's the other way? This is the other way, right? And this is what you guys are into. It's what we're into. It's about supporting, nurturing, and improving the systems that exist, to make the public systems particularly, to make them better, to make them more efficient, to make them more powerful. And this is where open comes in. So open, all open, open source, open government, open education resources, open standards, they're all about building things that are bigger than one person, bigger than one government, bigger than one generation even, to try and improve things for the next generations. So the reason I'm telling you all this is I want to get to our mission, and I'm trying to explain why Moodle exists and what we do, and why I want to work with Nextcloud. This is our mission, right? Empowering educators to improve our world. So now you can hopefully understand exactly why it's that, because the only way to improve our world is through education, and it's by empowering educators. We can't go out there and say, we want to teach all the students, because that's disruption. That's replacement of teachers. That's controlling education. But if we empower educators, the educators will do the right thing. Our mission fits on a t-shirt. That was very important for me, that we could fit that on a t-shirt. The vision is to give the world the most effective platform for learning. I don't think we're there yet. We're nowhere near, but we have a lot of plans and a lot of things we want to do, and that's our goal. These themselves they're not enough, right? You could be a Nazi and say, well, I think we could improve our world through empowering educators, right? It's got to be a bit more, and that's why we have these values. So we have 5 values. Our first one is education as a value. So for us, we're saying education is making the world a better place, and that every situation contains education, or it should. Every conversation, right? Every meeting. Openness is important to us. Everything we do, we try and do openly as much as we can. In a few instances, we're not open because we have to be strategic against commercial competitors, for example. And so, you know, there are occasions when we're not. We tend to always, if you're not sure, be open, because, as you know, you have unintended effects that help. And for us, openness is accessibility, it's international, it's being as open in every way we can. Respect, we try and treat everyone with respect and sensitivity, and this even includes competitors. It includes every stakeholder. Integrity. So we try and be honest and fair in every action, and we try and be as highly ethical as we can, and do the same thing in private as you would do in public. And lastly, innovation. It's a very strong value for us, and we try and include the ability for all of the employees, all the staff, to have space to innovate, to be empowered to actually just try new things. And usually all the most interesting stuff just started as some innovation from one person who had a really good idea and went for it. Generally, committees are not very innovative. So that's where we are. That's what this project Moodle is, and that's what we're. So now I'll tell you a bit about what we're doing. So we have our Moodle core product, which has the server side of things and the client side of things. We have a lot of work to do on usability. Moodle's a very complicated and not a new product, right? It's 15 years old, 2 million lines of code. So usability and all the recent things that we all know should be happening needs some time to make it better and better. And so we're focusing a lot on usability. Actually, a lot of the time we're not, well, this next release and the one after, there's no new features actually. We're just focusing on usability. Seamless consistency across devices is important for us. So if you start something on a mobile app and you put it down and switch to your computer, you should be able to resume. Even if you are halfway through typing a forum post or something, you should be able to resume. And it should feel very natural to go from one device to another. If you switch into an augmented reality headset, or if you switch into a voice mode, you should be able to just continue, and it all feels very natural. I think if you look at how we use devices these days, that makes a lot of sense. We're doing work on AI and machine learning, not to replace teachers, but to have Moodle itself be an active participant, which means like a teaching assistant or a tutor, a learning assistant. So low-level stuff, it can monitor and it can give everybody feedback on what's happening, so that teachers can be teaching, 100 or 1,000 students or 100,000 students with better efficiency and more quality. And likewise for learning, the teacher can't always be giving you feedback because there's too many students. And you do get feedback from other students in Moodle. We have a lot of that built in. But the system should also be there as a voice that's constantly notifying you about things. And lastly, integrated with everything. It's the time for products that exist on their own is over. It doesn't make sense, and the future is things that are integrated. And this is a massive, massive task, because we can't just integrate. We need to integrate with ethics, and we need to integrate with data privacy in mind, and we need to integrate with full control by users. And so there's a lot of work there. So that's, I could talk for 3 hours about what we're doing in Moodle Core, but that gives you the sense of where we're heading. The second big project we have is we have a SaaS platform called Moodle Cloud. And Moodle Cloud just makes it easy and cheap for anyone to get a Moodle site. More and more of our users are not able to download and install PHP applications. So there needs to be other ways for them to get it. And we have our Moodle partners doing this. but we wanted to have something sitting at Moodle.com. So if you ever heard of Moodle, you'd go to Moodle.com and you go click and you get it, just like the Silicon Valley stuff. So now in there we can actually build different packages for different sectors. So we have packages for schools, for workplaces, and eventually possibly universities. So these are, but there's a lot more opportunity here. You can build custom solutions for very tiny sectors, right? So a good example would be fire stations. So people who have to put out fires for a living, okay? 90% of the time, probably 99% of the time, what are they doing? They go to work and they sit there waiting for a fire. They don't have anything to do, right? So they're sitting around. However, in that sort of a job, you have to be constantly training. You have to be always getting certified and recertified and keep up to date on your skills. So they have a lot of learning to do. So they're sitting around in fire stations with computers learning. So if somebody made a package, a really good package for that sector, they could all reuse it. It's like a very good opportunity for them, for someone. So we can do things like that there, right? And we can distribute those packages through partners or ourselves, etc. The third one is very important, is that there are SaaS integrations we can do, because if you look at a lot of the integrations that are out there, they're a little bit difficult to do easily with custom installed PHP applications. And I'm talking about integrations that are incoming. So for example, say you're on another SaaS platform and you want to add an education package to it. You might go to their marketplace or their app store inside that thing, and you want to just add a Moodle. With our current model, we can't do that, right? Because there's all these different partners and it's complicated and you have to download it, etc. Whereas if we could have a one-click solution to just get a Moodle site right now, then this is where it needs to happen on our Moodle Cloud system. Especially though, I want to really focus on open SaaS stuff, and Nextcloud, etc. is why we're talking. The last thing is we're building Mooks on there, and this is course hosting, so that universities can just host a course on our system. There's a lot of reasons why they might want to do that. Maybe let me hurry along though. So I mentioned Moodle. I mentioned Moodle Cloud. The third big thing out of the four I want to talk about is we have a whole. We've realised that just putting software in people's hands is not the whole solution. It's probably 20% of the solution, because 80% of any software is how you use it. Right? Just because you give your grandmother a piece of software on her phone, it doesn't mean she's going to use it very well. Or you need training, you need learning. And so we're building a whole curriculum to teach people how to use this software. It's very deep. It has a lot of capability, but if people don't use the capability, then they're going to use it in a very basic way. And sadly, most teachers use Moodle as a file repository. They actually dump files in it, and that's what they think a course is, when it totally isn't. It's about activities, and there's a whole lot of rich things that Moodle supports. So we're building that. And the fourth thing, this is the most exciting thing, is we're building a new social media platform. That this is for our users to actually work together, to come together, and it's going to be integrated with every Moodle site globally. And it's about creating and sharing content and services with each other. So this is a brand new thing we're starting, and I'm pretty excited about this. A lot of the developers are excited because they get to not work on PHP for a change. This will be ground up a whole new system. The key thing about it, though, is it's got to be different from social media like Facebook and Twitter, etc., which are, as I said, advertising driven. This has to be an ethical system where privacy is very clear who owns data, where it's very clear that it's been built with open methodologies, open thinking, and human thinking, so that humans have control over it. And this is a big challenge for us to work on, but I think it's a challenge worth doing. So these are the four big things we're working on. Right. Lastly, where we are. So this is how the world looks from here. I'm here somewhere in the center of the world, and these are the other M's are where we have people working for the Moodle company. We are about to open an office in Barcelona, and we're also starting a Moodle Foundation, a non-profit probably in Brussels, because Europe is where I want to be. Europe is where all the cool stuff is happening in the world, in my opinion, in all these things I've been talking about. And we want to get really engaged with open projects of all kinds around the place. So let me talk about Moodle and Nextcloud. So this obviously came out of this approach of looking at open projects and open things that are around. If you look in our plugins directory, we have about we have 1,384 plugins written by the community, connecting with different things and implementing different extensions. It's about 771 developers. A lot of these are actually integrations with other open projects. There's a very active community. And there has been an integration with OwnCloud for quite some time, quite some years. It's been in the community. And not super deep, but it has been there. And I want to tell you why we're putting a lot more focus into it now. Maybe this is going a bit sideways. So one of the things we've done recently is in the last couple of years is work with a project, Big Blue Button. So Big Blue Button implements something that Moodle doesn't have, which is a very good video conferencing classroom type thing. And we don't want to develop that. So it makes sense that we integrate with Big Blue Button. And we've worked with them on an integration that's very deep. So it looks really good from the Moodle side of things. It works very seamlessly, and teachers can just easily jump into a video conferencing session as part of their class. Inside Moodle, we have files. Like I said, a lot of people dump files into Moodle, and we have these things called file areas. So this is a typical file area. This could be my own little private file areas as a user, but it could also be files that have been submitted for an assignment, or a folder of source materials that the teacher wants the students to use, etc., etc. Now, each one of these, you can dump them straight into Moodle, but there's a huge problem with that because courses are always changing, right? They run for 16 weeks or something and then finish. And all the files you put in there are now part of that course. So the approach we've always tried to... Sorry, I'm hearing some echo. The approach we've always tried to do, that we encourage people to do, is to store their files in a proper file repository. And people use a lot. We have a lot of open source integrations with, we have a lot of integrations with repositories. Most of them are commercial. And earlier this year, we worked on two that a lot of people said they needed, right? And this is because they've already chosen these products, not because I love them, but they've already chosen to use G Suite or Office 365. And as you know, these are both very aggressive platforms, and schools have chosen to use them. And I would much rather that they at least used open source for their learning management system as well. So the integration was necessary with them. So we did a lot of work about a year ago on this stuff. And the result is, you can log in using OAuth. using these systems on the Moodle login pages. And these files can now be embedded inside courses. So wherever you've got Moodle learning workflow, you have the files can be embedded. They either appear like this in the file areas. So these files, even though they look like this in Moodle, could actually be residing outside on a repository. Moodle supports this kind of file syncing. And that means if you update it in the external system, it updates here. And that works really well if you have ongoing, new courses and ongoing activity, that you aren't losing your data all the time. Your important data is stored in a repository and just appears here. And as well as the files, we can have embed the document editing. And I think nobody would argue that the Google Docs editing is pretty amazing. It's really good. Just because it exists, though, doesn't mean that we have to stop trying to do it in an open way. And I would love to see more options, or at least a really good open option. And I know you guys are working on that together with Collabora and others. That we have to get. We need open solutions for this. We don't need Google reading all of our documents, right? There needs to be good open methods of doing this. So, look, recently this year, the OwnCloud plugin was updated by Jan Dageford, who's at the University of Munster. And I don't know if he's there on this conference this week, but he worked on this integration, which is great. He's updated it somewhat for the new OwnCloud and Nextcloud. At this point, it works on both of them. But if we have to choose, you know which one I'm choosing. So at this point, it just does the file stuff. And what we need to now do, though, is work together on taking it forward. It's early days now, but I think if we work together, if we have open projects that work together, and we can make the solutions for education specifically that are not only open but are the best solution. This is how we actually change the world. It's the only way to go. We have to make the solutions the best solutions, so that people choose them without having knowledge of maybe the philosophy behind open source, without having necessarily a political agenda. They're just choosing it because it's the best software around, and it's cost effective, and it works really well. And then all the benefits of open will start to happen, and they'll get them anyway. And so at this point, we haven't put a lot of work into these integrations yet ourselves. It's been mostly University of Munster and the next. I met with Frank for the first time a few months ago in Germany, in Stuttgart, and we had a really, really great conversation, and we committed to working together on this, and we really want to make it a good integration and work with other open projects as well. So we're actually planning an open education software conference in Europe early to mid next year, and I want to bring together developers from our two projects and other projects as well, to see how we can make the best solutions for education. And I'll end it there. I don't know if there's any questions, but I'm very happy to talk about anything you like. If you need to contact me, there's my details.